Hey everybody, welcome back to That's Pure Leadership. And again, this one is just a little bit different. It's a little raw, it's a little closer to the heart. Today's episode is for anyone that has ever asked themselves, who am I to be doing this? Or what if this isn't good enough? Or worse, what if I'm not good enough? That feeling, that fear, that imposter syndrome that sits right alongside you. It shows up next to everything that you're passionate about. And every time you care about something deeply, it is not just you. And that is why we are calling this episode the one where we did it scared, because that is exactly what leadership looks like sometimes. Join along. All right. So when this podcast launched, people saw a fairly polished intro. They saw good cover art, some episodes lined up, maybe even a little bit of confidence in how I shared it. They saw this on a professionally designed website. They saw this in Spotify. They saw this in Apple Podcasts. They saw this in iHeartRadio. They saw this anywhere that they were listening, and something that was really, hopefully, seen as something well manicured, something that was really done well with all sorts of good intention, but all sorts of professionalism and confidence and strength to put this out there. But what everyone didn't see was countless numbers of drafts that didn't get published. Tear-soaked notebooks pages that came from hours in the middle of the night, in the morning, in the afternoon, of things that just didn't work out. The episodes that were recorded and deleted. The outlines that I rewrote 14, 15, 16 times. Or worse, the self-talk spirals over whether my voice sounded right. The moments I asked myself if I was just making noise. And you know what? I still don't love the sound of my voice. But as my wife will say, no one's walking away from you because of the sound of your voice. But also, I love it. And when it comes to confidence, that confidence that comes off, confidence compared to what? Confidence compared to yesterday? Yeah, there's a little bit more there, and it's growing. Confidence compared to tomorrow? Maybe not. But the difference is that I'm showing up anyways. And that's what matters, because that's where that confidence comes from. And I'll tell you something personal here. I am the biggest introverted extrovert that might be out there. I'm sure there's claim to fames. I'm sure there's measurements, and I'm sure there's a number of different things and people that might want to challenge that. But not many years ago, especially not as many years ago as I'd like to admit, I wouldn't even answer the phone. Phone calls, not my thing. Incoming, outcoming, I was not about talking to other people. That was not my forte. It wasn't my gift. It wasn't where I thought my gift might be. It wasn't a space that I thought was for me, despite the fact that it was something that I really wanted. I once lived solo in college, and for multiple years, I would call home because I realized I was like, there is a good chance it has been 24, 36, 48 hours since I have opened my mouth to do anything other than to eat and breathe. And now I find myself here, posting videos, telling stories, talking into a microphone, not because I woke up and became magically confident, but also in part because I heard Glennon Doyle say, if you can't get over the fear, just do it scared. And so I did. And you know what starts to happen is that confidence starts to build. Because that confidence builds with action, not before it. And that's something that I want to emphasize here so much, because there are so many people sitting out there waiting for their confident moment, waiting for that light bulb to say, I've got it. I have everything that I need. I have the confidence to do this. I have crossed all of my T's. I have dotted all of my I's. I'm ready to go. And more often than not, that time doesn't happen. And so many of those moments pass because we're waiting for confidence to come and not realizing that we build that through our actions, not before them. There's another quote that came out, and there's one that I really want to read the whole thing. And it's been done, it's been talked about a number of different times. But I want to share that, and how it relates to one of the biggest roadblocks that I really see with people and the fear that holds them back. So Teddy Roosevelt said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who was actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. But there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms and the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat." And Brene Brown talks about that at length as well, to the point that she's memorized it and I think shares it very eloquently, but it's one that it just hits different. And here's something that I've realized, and I want many of you to realize as well, that for many of us, the arena doesn't always feel intimidating because it's dangerous, but a lot of times it feels intimidating because it's crowded. We look around and think that there are already too many voices, that there's nothing new that I can say. My idea isn't original enough. We think the arena is already full. So let's talk about an example of a very full arena, and one that I've recently used multiple times with clients that didn't feel that their niche was enough, felt that it was already saturated. So let's talk about bottled water. Because what could be more interesting than bottled water? An industry absolutely dominated by giants. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nestle, with billions, with a capital B, billions already made, and shelves packed and market cornered, projected to hit $500 billion in the next few years. The industry, by definition, is packed. And we see it. We see it at gas stations, at convenience stores, at grocery stores, at ballparks. The bottled water industry is packed. And yet, in 2018, along comes Liquid Death, a canned water company, not bottled, not filtered through glacier vibes, no claim to fame on never being touched by human hands. It's not coming from Fiji. Although I'm biased, it is coming from mountain water in Colorado, but it's just water with a message to murder your thirst and a mission of death to plastic. It's irreverent. It's weird. It's canned water. And now it's also valued at over $1.4 billion. And even that figure is probably 6 months old. $1.4 billion. Sink that in for a minute on just how much water that is, on the impact made in an arena deemed too full. That arena might feel too full, but it's not full of you. Your voice, your angle, your perspective. There is always room for the bold. There is always room for the different and for the brave, especially the ones who are willing to do it scared, especially the ones that are willing to jump into the arena because it is about you and it is about being in that arena, not those that are not willing to get in there, those that are willing to only critique. And so sometimes we have to do it scared. We have to do it messy. We have to do it anyways. And so here's one of the things that I've learned, and through this as well, is that there is this myth where we just need to be ready. Like we have to feel confident, fearless, polished before we can begin. But so many of us waste so much energy trying to get ready. I can sit here and say that I have undoubtedly wasted a tremendous amount of time just trying to get ready. Does it mean that it was worthless? Absolutely not. Getting ready for battle, getting ready for those moments, getting ready for launch is paramount to that. But what's not is crippling ourselves waiting when we know that we're ready, when we can still grow, when we can still develop with that, overthinking, polishing something until the soul gets scrubbed out of it. And that's what also happens all too often. I have had the absolute pleasure of working with some of the most brilliantly technical engineers, designers in the industries that they are in. And so many of them are capable of polishing projects and ideas until the very core of that idea has been scrubbed right out of it, until that they have started to actually lose the core of why they originally started this. So I'm not saying to go out and you should publish your half-baked work, but I am saying that you also need to ask yourself, what am I really waiting for? Because most of the time, the fear that we feel isn't our skills or our ideas. It's that perfectionism, that all or nothing thinking. And it's not leadership. It's fear in disguise. Leadership is showing up. It's messy. It's honest, and it is becoming. Confidence does not show up at first. It shows up after. It grows alongside action. So if you're sitting there a little scared right now, good. You're not broken. You're just becoming. And so with that, I want to really leave you with this. You don't need to be fearless to lead. You just need to be willing. You need to be willing to try. You need to be willing to hit publish, willing to be seen, even if it's uncomfortable. In 2020, when we sat in the middle of the pandemic and everybody went suddenly remote with so much of their work, with the exception of those that were deemed necessary, so many people were in very uncomfortable spaces. And the environment that I was in, LinkedIn was the social media platform. It was where people would share ideas, quote unquote thought leaders would exist and share and bring insights forward. And I found it terrifying. I didn't want to be part of that. I would delete and delete and delete and overthink and publish and then delete later because I just didn't think that environment was for me. But when suddenly so much of that in accidental conversation and those moments that weren't always intentional, but they were building relationships in the office went away, I felt like it was the time and place to start to share. And for me, it was just a willingness to try and hit publish and be okay with it and let those words sit for a little bit. And then realizing as it grew and connections started to grow and engagement started to grow, that I wasn't the only one feeling that. I wasn't the only one that was after a connection in that way, that wanted to bring intentionality to conversations, that wanted the idea of like, let's just sit on FaceTime. Let's have a Teams call where we have no objective, just to be in a seemingly shared space, because I was willing to try. Because I can look back now and be like, man, maybe these should have stayed in the rough draft stage, but they were timed right and they were delivered at the right moment. We can always go back and look, but we need this willingness to try. We need this willingness to hit publish, this willingness to be seen, even when it's uncomfortable. Because you don't have to be for everyone. And I certainly know despite the fact that my mom is probably listening, hoping and praying that I am for everyone, I know I'm not. And that's the point. I never want to be. So whether you're at the start of something, stuck in the middle of something, or scared to take the next step, do it scared. Do it messy. And do it anyways, because that is peer leadership. If this episode hits home, share it with someone who's been sitting on the edge, someone who needs that little nudge, someone who's waiting to feel ready. And let's remind them, they don't have to be ready. They just have to be willing. Thanks for being in the arena with me. I see you. I appreciate you. And I will catch you next time on That's Pure Leadership.